This podcast has been brought to you by Voyager's World. We are building the most amazing hospitality network. Please visit our website, join us for free, and start participating.
Welcome to our podcast. We have Allan Rosier. And there is a reason why Allan has been chosen to be on our first podcast. It's a very special situation. Allan was the first one to join our project, Voyager's World. He was the first one to believe me on the project and to start contributing with ideas and became a partner, and for that I am immensely grateful. Everything that happens, everything that is going on now, started with our talking, and most of the design came out of our experience, of our shared experience. So Allan, thank you so much for that. It's a great honor to have you here. And I want our listeners and viewers to get to know you a little better.
Thank you, Milton, and hello, world. Good morning. I'm coming to you live via the wonderful thing we call the internet and that beautiful thing called Skype from the East Coast of the United States, Fort Lauderdale, Florida. I'm in my living room until I'm on my way out the door to circumnavigate the globe, the globe, to do something. I'm an avid traveler. I wish I could travel more than I do, but as with most persons in the world, we all have this thing called work. So, that is a deterrent. I'm not like Milton and other, what I say, very fortunate people that are in the internet technology world that can work from anywhere in the world. I'm not savvy like that. I'm just a user, not a maker. But other than that, I guess I'm a pretty nice guy. I know that in the conversations that Milton had over time. Now, I've known Milton for several years before the project came to an idea from him and then into its current fruition and future fruition. So when Milton was here at my home and we were talking about laying out plans for Voyager's World, I was very excited about that. To be part of a community, a global community that I knew that I could go to and send a message to somebody, maybe a phone call, meet with somebody in a foreign place that I didn't know anybody or anything. And it's, as a traveler, it is an incredible experience to have that, whether it's a cup of soup with somebody or a bowl of lentils or a bowl of rice or just a nice funny laugh on a park bench in a park somewhere while you're waiting on a bus and somebody getting you to that park bench to get you on the right bus because there's 50 of them there and you don't know the language. So the Voyager's World project in that respect to me is incredibly cool, and I'm very excited to see where it goes and also the people that I meet along the way.
Yeah, in fact, we met, I believe, the first time on a Couchsurfers meeting, which was what brought us into this world. But you came across as especially likable. You have a personality that it makes it very easy to become friends with you, but also free of nonsense. Like if you have to say no to someone, you're not afraid to do so. If you have to refuse something, or like you are not a pushover in any way, and at the same way, you are incredibly generous and hospitable. So it made it very, very easy to appreciate everything you do, because you have absolutely no problem saying no. So when you say yes, it becomes very, valuable and very easy to appreciate. I like that point in your personality. And there were many times in which interacting with other people or going to events that I invite you, occasionally you said no, and you had your good reasons, and it was always very easy to respect that. So I appreciate that. But I would like to start this podcast also talking about what was your life before you start couch surfing. Not just focusing on history, but what happened of that is more remarkable. Let's say before 2009 or so.
Well, in the respect of the couch surfing world, in particular couchsurfing.com, um, that particular website, as far as well as the experiences that have come from that. Um, just backing it up, I was a traveler before couch surfing, before I even realized that there were any internet-based hospitality groups that were out there. I wasn't trained in the thought of and hadn't experienced that, but I had been trained. It was normal for me to go to many resources, books, magazines, etc., to find out information on cities and states that I would attend, that I would travel to, and glean my information from those sources. Book a hotel, book a rental car, and go. Many times I've traveled with my family, my mom and dad, one of my brothers, cousins, uh, and a couple of times with friends, and doing these accomplishments, these travel accomplishments. And it was on one particular flight that I came back. So before 2009, a lot of traveling. 3 times a year, I got on an airplane. I went to a place that I never went to before. That was very fearful for me, but I did it because you don't know anybody on the other side. You're sitting in a hotel lobby trying to make, and me, I'm kind of personable, I believe, trying to make conversation with people. It's not always easy. Not other people's are not real receptive, especially I think in a travel mode because it's so transient. But in 2008-ish, I guess, I was on an airplane and I grabbed one of those magazines that are in the back seat pocket of the jet. And I was just reading and I saw this 2-sentence paragraph, call it that, on couch surfing. And I thought, and it was about, traveling, staying at people's private homes, things like that. Not like a timeshare or a private house swap, but a live, somebody's going to be there and somebody's going to hang out with you and all. So that kind of lodged in the back of my head. And when it came time to put into motion that, because that's right up my alley, meeting new people, especially people that are embedded in a community where I'm going to be, that know about a particular special thing in a public park or a city park or even a park right down the street from their house that is interesting to me. And I'm all over stuff. I'm not just a museum guy and a good restaurant guy. I can call around in the gutters and go give me a good dumpster to do a dive in. If somebody knows it, I'm there. That to me is what makes traveling exciting and makes the story more exciting. So when I saw that couch surfing thing, I thought, okay, I'm going to sign up on this. And I did. And I began to go to local meetings here in town where I met several people, including you, Milton. And I began talking to these people about their experiences. Now, I am fortunate enough to have the opportunity to have space to host people into. So for me, it was not only going out and meeting people and learning what should I do when I go into somebody's home or things like that, but how should I also act and give back to the community karma that I get knowing that I had to give back. So it was a great mold and conversation between many people that do host, people that don't host, people that only host social meetups in different cities where they're at, people that don't do any of that. The biggest thing that for me was not only was there all kinds of skin color, but there was education level beyond my wildest dreams. There were people with PhDs, medical doctors, there and that kind of level of education. And there were people that didn't have that. There were people that were on their gap year in Europe, and this is something that drives me nuts as an American. Why didn't I get this? But there were young people, male and female, on their gap year between high school and college that were traveling the world with the backpack, and they were using that particular platform, the couchsurfing platform. But within that couchsurfing platform, I also heard about warm showers and Be Welcome and a couple other sites that were out there. But all in all, it was just the fact of meeting these people and then talking. And I didn't mention the age thing too. I've been in a room with people that are traveling the world that are 16, 15. I hosted a family here at home, French family from southern France. The two boys were at that time maybe 12 and 14. So, and they were traveling with their mom and dad for about a year. And so the ages are there as well as people. I surfed with my mom, who at the time was like 78 or 77.
Wow.
In California, we went outbound and she had a ball. So, but she's not the only person that's that age level that is out there doing it, that is out there hosting, meaning providing safe, comfortable lodging for somebody, but setting up meetings, going to the local meetings, and traveling and showing up at events that are happening around the world. So, 2009 kind of changed my world to travel. And now, of course, with the advent of Voyager's World, to have these avenues to go and find information, and not necessarily a meetup, but boards that are there that you can go to and you can read different people. Oh, hey, I went and saw this. I went and saw that. I went and did this. I went and did that. Something that isn't in Folders or these other tour books or these other AAA or, whatever the Automobile Association affiliations are around the globe. If they're there, they're not there. These are people that are there, that are given those little Post-it notes up on that bulletin board. And that right there, to me, is diamond.
Yeah. By the way, that was a feature that I always loved. That later disappeared on the redesign, which was the information pages. So we are resuscitating that concept on Voyager's World. In fact, it was much more interesting and practical, the kind of advice you got from people that actually live in the area, because they know the restaurant that just opened. They know where there is a jacuzzi you can use for free. They know where is the something that is not like a tourist attraction, but something that is interesting. Like a friend of mine went on a tour here in Kiev, in which they went into a subway station and they snuck into the tunnel, and they had to hide from the trains and get behind these walls and go under lasers. That they have security lasers there for exactly to avoid what they were doing. So they had to crawl under the lasers, and then they went to this room that someone knew existed, where people meet. They go there and they bring a drink and they talk and tell stories with the trains passing by. But it's a room that is in such an angle that the operator doesn't see them, so they can stay there for a while. And then they crawl out of that way. They get into some other underground passage, and they end up in another station. And then they have to wait for the train to pass. Then they snuck in and they end up back in the platform, and people look at them and and they don't know what's going on. When these guys suddenly appear from the edge of the platform. So this is the kind of thing that will never appear in a tourist guide, in a tourist book. It will never be a commercial thing because of the liability or the fear that someone will, and one day someone will fuck it up. You know it. You do a nice party in the desert, like a friend of mine used to do. He would, bring like 100 people in the middle of the desert, away from anything, and they would have a great party and do drugs and by the way, everything I tell here is just hypothetical, all right? It's not true. So they would do drugs and drink and have fun, and it lasted for years until there is always that one asshole that creates a problem, creates some trouble. But apart from that, there are a lot of these events or these activities that they will never be in the tourist guide, but they will be in lists made by people that live in that place, and that information is much more valuable sometimes. You also mentioned the Europeans doing their gap year, right? I discovered that going to the meetings. Going to the meetings, I would talk to these young kids, mostly from Germany, and they would say, "Oh yeah, after finished college, or they were about to start college," and they say, "Yeah, we took a year and we are traveling now," and that blew my mind. I thought, "Wow, that was a cultural shock," because I was raised without knowing that existed at all. that existed as a normal thing in certain countries. And also, I remember hosting a few Germans that they told me they were doing volunteer work in America, and then one explained to me that they had to sign up for the army, but they could choose to, instead of going in the army, they could do volunteer work for that same period. And that volunteer work could be anywhere in the world. So that humbled me so much to see a German kid coming to America to do volunteer work, helping Americans. And to me that was such a demonstration of a clear-mindedness, of being open-minded to help and have that in your system, in the system that your government maintains. Have that concept be acceptable. This is a very progressive idea, and I like it. I like it very much. You also talk about the hosting, right? Why hosting is so important? I don't believe that hosting is the entirety of hospitality exchange. There is more to it, and Voyager's World, we don't want to focus too much on the hosting. It will be one of the things that you can do. It's one of the things that you can request. But sometimes you can meet someone just for a dinner. You can meet someone just to use the shower and the laundry. You can be, visiting someone just borrowing their surfboard. All of it is hospitality. I had people meet with me just to take me to the airport. Someone offered. I could just as well take a cab, right? But someone offered to, I'll just pick you up and take you to the airport, and we have some talk along the way. All he wanted to do was talk to someone that was going through his city. And it was a very nice, very interesting conversation. So hospitality takes all these shapes, and we want to promote all of them at the same time. But hosting is still the most important, no matter what, because it, unlike any other thing, it affects the budget of traveling. Nothing affects the cost of traveling as much as lodging. Even transportation doesn't come close, because if you if you, for example, if you travel, imagine traveling 1 month in Europe, going to interesting places. Just in lodging, you are talking about a few $1,000s, just for it. But if you stay at people's places, occasionally you camp, and you avoid lodging at all, now your entire trip went down to just a few $100s for the entire thing plus ticket. And the ticket can be just a few $100s. So I would say that today, with today's networking and technology and the references and all that, it became possible to go to Europe, spend a month, make a lot of friends, have amazing experiences with a very reasonable level of safety, all for less than $1,000. Now it's possible, and that's because it became possible to eliminate the cost of lodging. So I really don't advocate using networks just to because you don't want to pay for a hotel. That is not the right way to do it, to think about it. But because not having to pay for a hotel, it expands the options that you have. It creates opportunities to travel more and to travel better. So if that's the goal, then yes, by all means, eliminate that cost. And then there is the added benefit that also becomes more important as you grow and you mature into this, is that you are making friends and you are visiting people's lifestyles. Every time you get to their home, you are actually going to visit their life for a little bit of time. Not long enough that it's going to bore you, not short enough that you're not going to learn anything. So it's perfect, to just stay 2 or 3 days visiting someone. You really learn a lot. You enjoy it. It's fun. You're going to have great information about the city, and especially if you're visiting a place that is not very safe, it's going to increase your level of safety because that host can knows which ones are the places you can go to at night. He knows which bus you can take, which bus you shouldn't. He knows what are the specific places where you are more at risk, and following their advice is going to be much better than reading the advice in a book that was printed by someone that is not in that situation and maybe a long time ago. If you go to pretty much any city where safety is a big issue, from 1 year to a few years later, the advice changes. The bad neighborhoods change. Um, so what happened before 2008? I want to know a little more about you because, in fact, it's not just for this podcast, but in fact, I know very little of you before 2008.
Well, I mean, our common ground, obviously, Milton, is our love of travel and having met within the internet world and the real world of travel related websites and things like that. But I mean, I'm a kind of boring guy, I guess. I think I am. Career wise, I didn't finish high school. I'm a high school dropout, though I did go and complete my general education diploma. And at that point, my mom and dad put a big shoe up my hiney butt and said, okay, you're old enough to get out of school. You're old enough to go to work. So I've been working full time since I was 16. I did at 21 join the U.S. Coast Guard, where I spent 5 years. Uh, Cape May, New Jersey was boot camp. From Cape May, New Jersey, I came back home to Miami. That was a funny phone call. Mom, Dad, I'm coming home. 30 days later, after they had just thrown me out of the house, basically. So, yeah. So I lived at home again for a little while. And of course, many friends and fun things along the way. I am a native of Miami and now live in the Fort Lauderdale area. This is home. I don't know that I'd want to live anywhere else in the world, not because of my family ties, but because I've seen the community grow into the area that it is now. And it still excites me to go to Wynwood and go downtown and see the construction in Brickell and Miami Beach and Fort Lauderdale and, all the places, the Everglades and the west coast of Florida, all within very quick distance of my home. But so I went in the Coast Guard boot camp in Cape May, New Jersey. I came here to Miami to do some duty. From Miami Beach, Station Miami, I was shifted up to Station Fort Pierce. I was there for a little while, and then I came down to Station Lake Worth Inlet, which currently the incarnation is landside, but at that time I was in a historical home that is now a museum, Coast Guard house that's now a museum on an island named Peanut, right there in the inlet of Lake Worth. And from there, I got orders to California, to a little town called Petaluma for communications school, which is just north of San Francisco. So every weekend that I had Liberty, I was on the Liberty van from the base to the commuter bus down into San Francisco to hang out down there. And we were right across the mountain range from Napa Valley, before Napa Valley was kind of the big thing it is now. And so I went to tons of wineries on the weekends and had a lot of fun with the guys and girls that I had met out there. And then I got an order to go to a ship out of North Carolina, Atlantic Beach, North Carolina, a 205-foot cutter, Coast Guard cutter Cholula, which is really where the travel bug hit me. Because at that point I was on a ship and we sailed from Georges Bank, which is up off the coast of Maine. We cut water all the way down to the Southern Caribbean, with Curacao being our most southernmost port of call when we were doing a mid-patrol break, which is a rest and relaxation period while we're on patrol. So I spent some time down in Curacao, and the furthest north was in Portland, Maine, where those were the furthest north and south ports. Though we went to Boston, we went to Savannah one year for the St. Patrick's Day parade, which is, I understand, either the first or the second largest St. Patrick's Day parade in the United States. We were there as official representation. Boston, New York a couple of times. Of course, our home port, Virginia, Norfolk, Virginia, several times. Every time we go on a southern patrol, we had to stop in Miami for the captain's briefing. So, of course, me being in communications and knowing who the people were on the other side of the wires were the same kids I went to school with in California. I was able to send a message to my parents that I would be at a certain place at a certain time. So inevitably, we would pull up to a dock in downtown Miami and my parents' car would be sitting there. And and even in Fort Lauderdale, when we come there. And so that was always the joke. Rosie, why is that car always at a port we go to in South Florida? I don't know. But also part of that too was I was on a ship with 80 guys, and a lot of them came from other parts all over the country, all over the United States, many of them inland, not having really been on the ocean before, young and mature people. Excuse me. So I would sit down and write lists, especially if we went to Fort Lauderdale. Because growing up here in South Florida, even if, Miami Beach, Miami now, currently is this great big tourist destination. Miami Beach, South Beach, as the world knows it now, was not like that when I was a kid. We all, meaning the people that were my age group, my friends that had cars, we left Miami and we went to Fort Lauderdale Beach. Fort Lauderdale Beach was the beach to go to and party. That was the party spot because there was all the hotels that had bars all up and down. And, 18 was the age you could drink back then. So we would go to Fort Lauderdale. But because I had that local knowledge, I would sit down and write for days on end before the ship got to port and post it on our bulletin board on our mess deck there, just general information board of, hey, go here, do this, go here, go here. We didn't really have to have a bus route because everybody where we tied up port-wise was pretty much central in Fort Lauderdale anyways to take a quick cab ride over. And people were very generous somewhat too at that time. You know, they'd see a group of guys in uniform, and especially the girls would pull over. Hey, you guys need a ride somewhere? Yeah. So, you know, and that was how I gave back at that time. But because of that ship moving back and forth up and down the coast, and me seeing all these different Caribbean nations, Cuba, Guantanamo Bay, and having some knowledge that I had, because there were other guys on the ship that, oh, I've been here before, and we would pass information, not necessarily written on a bulletin board like I did, but they would say, hey, you know, let's do this. I can tell you one story in Boston. Doc Tipton, myself, a buddy of mine who I'm in still contact with 30 years later, Jim Gilliott, and there was this one other guy. We all four decided to rent a car while we were in Boston. And we set it up that we were going to go to a Greek restaurant that had belly dancing one night. And then Doc Tipton liked country western music, so we were going to go to a country western bar after dinner. The next day, it was a day tour around Boston and some of the suburbs. And then at night, I had duty, I think, that next night. But the other three people in the car, they went to another restaurant where flavors had never been tasted before by some of these guys, and they had their own thing. But the point I wanted to make there is the belly dancer and the Greek. The one guy had never seen a belly dancer, and he had never had Greek food. So to go to this place and hang out with him and watch him with his eyes this big looking at the belly dancers and eating the food that he was unsure of, you know, like, oh, I don't know about this, but I'm going to look at the girl, you know. That was cool. That was cool. So the travel bug struck then, my military time. As a young person, as a family, we didn't travel much. We went out of state to my parents' parents, my grandparents, and my cousins and aunts and uncles. They all live up in the Maryland, Virginia area. So that was our family trips. Then about 11 years old, Disney World. Oh, they started building Disney World in Orlando. So that became the weekend run, you know, where we would go as a family and do that. But the mature adult travel bug came through the Coast Guard. And then when I came out of the Coast Guard, I went back into an industry that I knew I had worked in for many years, which was the swimming pool service and supply industry. And I worked for a couple of companies, and then I realized I can do this on my own. So since 1989, I have been licensed and independently employed in my own, doing my own thing in the pool service world for work. In that period, the first 7 years, I did not take a vacation. I didn't know that it was okay to travel. And I was very, seriously,
Yeah, that's the story. That's the story of most small business. You know, you work as a slave, and you know you work a lot.
I mean, I still do, but I didn't know that I could travel. So the first time, of course, I traveled, it was very important to me to bring I wanted time with my family up north. So the first vacation that I did, I flew north and I hung out with my family in Washington, D.C. and saw my grandmoms. My grandpas were dead at the time, and hung out with my cousins, and we did day trips into Washington, D.C. And then that was week one. And then the following year, I took another week, and then I started breaking it out to now currently I take 3 1-weekers a year. And those 1-weekers, I get on an airplane and I go. So, the travel thing. Now, I know you and I, Milton, have talked about this. Why don't I come to Europe? Da 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 da.
Yeah, I tease you about it sometimes, and I think you should visit a little more.
You're not the only one. I have been to Europe once. I went and visited a friend in Sweden, and it was beautiful over there. And it's an oddball country to go to, from what I understand from my friends that travel internationally. But it was more of a gesture to go see my friend. But as far as international travel, I'll get there. Uh, Currently, it's just a prideful thing. It's something that's been in my mind ever since I was a child, that I want to see my own country first. And then when I'm ready, I'll be retired. Hopefully and I tell people I'm going to take a Sharpie and write the name of the town I want to go to and just stand on the side of the road hitchhiking, and I go. So that's my plan, my long-term plan, whether it happens or not. And of course, through participation in Voyager's World, which again, like I said earlier, is exciting, I'll have that extra ability to do what we had said already about meeting people. And even if I'm not wanting to hang out with anybody, what you focused on, Milton, which the couch surfing world has taken away, was those incredible threads that showed, hey, go here. And anybody that was asking out up on the public boards, what should I do? What should I do? Was so easy to cut and paste, and bam. And then they've got 15 pages of local information of who people think is the best beach, what the best restaurant is, where can I get a good tapas, where can I get a nice cup of mate with my Argentinian friends, things like that.
Yeah, the info pages were very important, and I love it. And it's a volunteer work. People do that spontaneously, uh, which makes it even more interesting. Also, we are going to allow people to if they have done something similar elsewhere, if they post, because a lot of people are bloggers today, or they have videos, or whatever it is. um, we are finishing this part of the system in which we allow people to share that outside contents, within Voyager's World. So you can do a search by place, for example, and you can find the info pages for it, with data that comes not just from our own website, but also from others. So that will be like a major search of info, but instead of going to Google and having to go through all the commercially pushed, contents, and seeing all the advertising and seeing all the stuff that is there for marketing process, you are going to do a search and find only what was there because people volunteer that information, and those that volunteer are excited about travel just as we are. So the selection and the contents are going to be very different.
Milton, let me stop you for a minute. You've mentioned the word volunteer a couple of times now. I cannot express how important it is for people that will hear this podcast and maybe see the video that's going on, that Voyager's World is not for sale. This is something, Milton, that you and I have discussed many times, and one of our tenets that I think should be spoken about, that we're not going to rent, we're not going to sell, we're not going to do anything with data, we're not going to collect data. And Voyager's World is going to be 100% relied upon by volunteers. And that to me is so incredibly cool that, I mean, how can you, I don't even know the words. I don't even really have the words, but it's so awesome to know that volunteer time is there, that the people that are going to be running the system, if you will, and not just the users, but the operators and the programmers and all, they are people that have traveled. They have not only within the couch surfing world, but maybe Be Welcome, maybe Servos, maybe Warm Showers, any of these multitudes of sites and avenues, they have been touched, whether they've been housed by somebody, whether they've been fed by somebody, whether they've been given a ride by somebody, or whether they've shown up at a meeting somewhere just to hang out because they happen to be in the right place at the right time and there was this really cool function going on of travelers like themselves. They are the ones that are giving them time and energy and knowledge to get the programs up and running. And I want to say thank you for them now and into the future, because none of this happens without those people that step up and operate and say, hey, I may not be able to pay. I may not be able to have somebody in my house. I may not be able to have a meal with somebody or offer a meal to somebody, and I may not have the time to go to a city park somewhere and put up a sign and have a party. Mm-hmm. So for those people, I want to say thank you ahead of time, because that right there, and it's not only the time that they give, but it's the energy that comes with that time, that you cannot mess with that.
There is another important point about it, which is if people volunteer their time, you have to be careful about what you take. I think that you should only take what it is that you are not going to discard. And that is a very important decision. If you're asking people to translate the website, like we have several people translating to Russian, German, Spanish, we are looking for someone to do French as of today. But these people are going to put in a pretty good amount of work. You don't do that not being sure that you're going to use it, that you're going to use what they did. You don't ask for people to volunteer information pages and then later throw it away, you know, and not even give them back a copy of it so they can post it somewhere else if they want to, you know. Yes, of course, legally that is the point that, well, the website owns all of this. Yes, but screw you. You cannot treat people that way. You know, that's not a matter of legality. This is a matter of strategy, of using. If you are going to use people's work, you will have to respect it. It goes above the level of just fulfilling legal obligations. So you cannot take work that you are not going to keep and use and share. And the other thing is that, yes, we decide to not follow the two most basic business models, revenue models for this industry. One is showing advertising, and the other is to sell the database for marketing of one kind or another. So when we took that decision, that cut two possibilities of revenue. And in the very beginning, I was sure that I wanted to do this, but I was not seeing a solution of how we can make money to keep the lights on, other than the donations. But with time, analyzing the way other websites that are donation based work, and thinking about the way that we want to do it, I became more and more comfortable with that. I thought, you know what, it really does work. But first, you need to deliver a lot of value. People will donate if they want to do it. They will not donate because you're asking for it. And that is a very important distinction. Even so even understanding that, yes, we can make money on the donations, and we can in the future maybe create events. There are several ideas that are floating around on how we can create some just enough revenue that we can keep this working. But that was the problem of raising money. I had to raise money to create the project altogether. It takes months of work, and it takes resources. And many times I got criticism of people saying, you cannot bring uh, you cannot bring partners if you don't have a strong revenue model. If you don't, now translating that to English, if you don't show that you can make money soon, there is no way to bring in investors. And that was not the case. We brought in enough money. We just reached this month. We reached our goal of fundraising for to put the project on the air, and with a relatively small number of investors. That means they put, instead of a lot of investors putting a little bit of money, we have a small number of investors putting a significant amount of money, each one of them. And to each, yes, and to each one of them, I said exactly this. I said, the money that you are putting in today will probably return to you, but you cannot be in a hurry, because it will depend on a lot of things happening. It will depend on people being very happy with the system and donating money, so we can give revenues, pay a little bit of revenue to people that are investing. We can pay them some salary to anybody that is working for us full time, or things like that may happen in the future. We'll be able to have a little bit of cash to take care of those expenses. Uh, but every investor that came in was a very experienced traveler. So they all understood where the value is. They all understood that when they were putting money into it, that was not like making a regular investment, or putting the money in the bank or the stock market. They know that money is going, and it may return, but they cannot think of it as a regular business, because this is not a regular business. I even said that no matter what, we are not going to put advertising, because advertising is irritating. I don't like even on the other, like today, it's irritating. Like there is an incredible pleasure in doing something and not being sold anything, and taking only what you want and not having any advertising throw on your face. So I was looking at that, and I responding sometimes to criticism. About a year ago, when we announced the project, people would question, or criticize, or question. Some of their questioning was very well thought, and they said, but if you never advertise, you don't make that money. I said, yeah, but we'll find another way to make money. What if you don't? Oh, well, I'll keep working for free. I make money in other projects too, like, not currently, because the other projects are not going very well. But generally in my life, I was not making money with Voyager's World. So I don't need to make money with Voyager's World. I live without it for most of my life, right? So I can create revenue for myself. I would still work on it even if it is for free. Oh, what if you can't? Well, then I close the doors, but I will not put advertising, period. And I know that is people say, well, okay, but that's a promise that other people made and they broke the promise. I understand. And I have no better answer to tell you than watch me. Watch me sit, or perhaps if you knew the kind of guy that I am, and if you knew how stubborn as a mule I am, then you would probably believe me a lot easier. Alan knows the kind of stubborn guy that I am. I can, you know me in person.
Yeah.
Yes, but and I think that a lot of that questioning comes from not laying down in bed late at night thinking about it for days and weeks and months, because it took me more than 2 years to decide to do this. I had the idea of Voyager's World. It had another name at that time, but I had the idea actually 3 years ago now. So for 2 years I only thought about it during my trips. I only thought, oh, this would be so amazing. But I never committed to it, and I never told anybody until I was sure that I was willing to go through the pain, of working on it for years, of defending when people don't believe it, of building it when people are still not helping, so that most painful part of the process is probably gone. Now I have more people helping, I have volunteers, and I have people helping financially and in resources. But for the first year or so, it was me and you, Alan, and two more guys. That was it, And for most of the summer, I couldn't do much, So it was painful. But the idea is old, and I think that when you spend so much time thinking about this, you get more creative. You start to imagine ways that other people are not seeing, and you see solutions that other people are not contemplating just because they didn't spend as many hours as you did, on the idea. But the first criteria that I had for people to join in was that if someone wants to bring money, but they have the idea that this is a regular investment and they are going to double their money in 2 years, or that there will be a very nice ROI waiting for them in a year or so, I told them no, we are not, we cannot do it. I cannot lie to you. So I told people, if you're getting in, you're getting in for the long haul, because this is going to take a while. And also sometimes people say, well, but there are other networks that have 10 million people. On that other network there is 1 million, and in that one there are 2 million. How many millions you need for this network to be awesome? And I think that the number is in the hundreds of thousands. I think that if you concentrate the people that are more enthusiastic, people that are more experienced about travel, those that understand hospitality exchange, the people that understand pay forward better. If you have just a few hundred thousands of those, you are already going to have the most amazing network ever built. You don't need quantity. All you need is a little bit of density. But I believe that the number where it becomes ideal is probably in the hundreds, just a few hundreds of thousands. With 500,000 people, I would consider this network very big, very big. Even if you imagine if you had 10 very exciting, enthusiastic, friendly people in each city that is above 100,000 people, in the world, it would still be just a few thousand, So it's not a lot of people that you need,
Milton, you just mentioned too the pay it forward, the term pay it forward. I know, and I'll speak for myself on this, that when you asked me to jump in, I was on a heartbeat, because that pay it forward is karma. Again, another word, and then not a word, but an expression of feeling. But the pay it forward, for me, back when I was attending the local meetings to get to know people and started meeting travelers through the Couchsurfing network, for me, the pay it forward was, wow. I'll never forget my first trip going outbound, and the whole trip was in private homes, people I've never met, and I would communicate nicely. I have to admit, I'm anal when it comes to communication. I believe that whether it's Skype or telephone or internet message, or even, my God, snail mail. But you communicate well, and I communicated well. But for me, as a traveler now, having gone into a private home, and you mentioned budget travel as well. For a lot, this is budget travel, but as I spoke of earlier, I've met people that are physicians, practicing physicians through in their countries that are financially stable. They don't have to go and do it this way. They choose to do it this way because they want to hang out with people. And that's the high, the PhD level, and then there's the non-educated level, of course. But either way, but man, when you're hosted by somebody, and for me, it's not just being in a house. I've attended local meetings and meetups at a restaurant or a bar, or a pub crawl when I've traveled in other cities and met incredible people. But the person that is organizing it all and answering all the phone calls and all, that's a pay it forward. When I talk to those people, they're the ones that have said, man, I have to tell you, I went on to this trip to Reykjavik. I was there for a couple of days. I met these incredibly cool people. They took me, we did this, we did that. We had meals together. I stayed in, over here, over there. They treated me like a king. I couldn't come back and not give that back in to the programming, because that pay it for, and I know that there are people that will come into any internet network, not even internet network, but any group, and they will say one thing and completely do another, and they will just use that system and be energy vampires. I don't expect not to see those within Voyager's world. I know they're going to be there. Welcome. Welcome you too.
Yeah,
but no,
and still they are a minority. Even no matter what network that you participated, yes, that as I like to say, in any party there will always be that guy, that guy that gets drunk, kicks your dog, eats the food, doesn't share, and yeah, that is always that. But it's one guy. You have a party of 100 people. That is amazing. So all you have to do is manage that, to keep that energy vampire in very tiny quantities, and promote a culture where people are like-minded, they are generous, they are interesting, and then that person doesn't feel that comfortable. They go just so far, but they see that to participate more and to get more, they also need to be and give more. So that, I think that what stops that person from doing too much damage is facing a culture that is very generous. And I think that culture has to start on the leadership, on the organization. That culture will not exist if the website that is trying to maintain and manage and promote that, if the website is not in line with that culture. So if we have a website where we promote voluntary work, and we promote sharing of resources, and we promote equality, things like that, those values are going to be compatible with the culture that will be within it. If we don't, for example, if in the community of course there will be occasional disputes and differences of opinion, and sometimes you have to moderate those cases. When there is a discussion that goes crazy on the boards, or when there is a dispute about a reference or anything like that, occasionally you need to mediate on that. If the values that mediation is being done with are not clear and compatible with this culture, things unravel. So if you are saying, oh, we are for equality, but then you let someone promote inequality on the board, or on the way that they do anything, then it unravels. Things don't go well, because people will not believe you if you don't do what you are saying. So if we are saying, well, we are going to promote one good example is equality. You know, equality for women. Uh, uh, Either you believe it or you're just pretending that you believe it, right? Uh, on maintaining message boards, occasionally there will be disputes exactly about that, where cultural values will conflict with the equality value, you know, and people will be observing how it is that which one you let win, you know. So if you have to choose sides occasionally, and that's why our values page is our most important page. That describes exactly how we are going to take those decisions, you know, for compassion, for, you know, to being generous, to being equal, and things like that. uh, so pay forward is a manifestation of that, a manifestation of understanding that we are all on this together, you know. And if you are there, you know, having fun and it's transforming your life, you will feel, we don't need to tell you to pay forward, you will feel compelled if the culture around you helps you, you know, has the instruments, the systems to make it easy. You're going to do it. You don't need to be told to do it, you know. So we're on the right track. And again, I really appreciate that you were the first one to join in and to believe all this and help us write the, you know, the values.
We'll see where it goes. I'm certainly excited because it's a new thing for me to be on the ground floor of what I see can be a very, very cool place to be. Um, you know, for me, the people that I've met internationally and domestically in my travels, the very little international back to Sweden, but you know, my international exposure is here in the U.S. Um, but wow, if those types of people are coming into Voyager's world, and I know they will, and they may not come into the mass numbers like some of these other websites that are out there. And that's fine. I'm cool with that. I know, Milton, you're cool with that. And I know the other investors are cool with that. This not about numbers. It's about the experiences. It's about the karma. It's about the pay it forward. That right there to me was the impetus to jump in and be part of it. And that's what I'm excited about. Yes, I'm not the youngest guy in the barn. I know that in many of the travel circles I've been in, that a large percentage of the people in there are mainly the coming right out of high school, budget, in college, budget, post college, establishing themselves, semi budgeted. But then a lot of people go on and have families and step away from some of these sites because it just, for them, they don't feel it to be conducive. Though I have met families, like I said, I had a family here from France that were traveling. So I know that all of those types of people is what makes it exciting to me because I'm going to meet some of the neatest people. I don't know if I'll be crawling along train tracks under laser beams and all that stuff. So I may be on the train waving as it goes by, you know, but those kind of experiences are what are screaming to me. And I certainly look forward to the people that I meet at all level of functionality, if that's a good word, within the domain. There's really cool people that I haven't met. There's really cool enemies that I haven't met. There's really cool friends that I haven't met. There's all of it. And I look forward to that. And through Voyager's world, I'm going to do it.
Yeah, I should also acknowledge that there were like I think some 20 people that gave us money when we did our first crowdfunding. Uh, you know, they made their contributions, whatever they, you know, whatever amount they could, and I don't forget they got a. I have a list of them, and I make sure that they are in touch, that they are participating, that their suggestions are always welcome, and so we are working on that. But now back to you a little bit more.
Okay,
What it is?
wait just a second. You hit on something that I want to hit on.
Okay.
Just a minute ago, the last couple of sentences you mentioned that you were in contact with other people that helped during the initial crowdsourcing. And I just want to say to the people that are listening that I know Milton, you and I have discussed this, and I'm sure that the other investors know as well, and as well as the people that will come in and volunteer to help. We are open big time to any criticisms that any person has. If you think that you see something, if a user, we encourage users that if they see something that they think can be better a different way, get detailed and hit enter. Let us know, because if it's something that is viable, it's happening. We're not going to be unwavering when it comes to trying to make the site as user friendly and as people oriented as possible. So that's all I wanted to say on that.
But I would like to know a little more about what you are doing currently. You said you told me a little bit about a very interesting project with the lighthouse, and tell us what's going on.
So I've been in business since 1989. I've started traveling, and in the last few years, as I said moments ago, I'm not the youngest guy in the stable, so retirement is a reality for me. I don't know when it's going to happen, but it is a reality. And my biggest fear with that is the amount of time that is available to do a lot of stuff or nothing. I know a lot of people that have gotten into nothing, and unfortunately, it hasn't been a good thing for them. Not that they can't afford their lifestyles, but it's sad because in my mind, they have declined. They were once very productive people within their workspaces, within their communities. It seems like that all happened when they were working. In the time that they retired, they just stopped doing all that and became nothing. And that is very freaky to me. So that's not going to happen. So I started getting into volunteer work. Now, I mentioned earlier I was in the Coast Guard. And one of the neatest things that the Coast Guard has, and none of the other military services have here in the United States, is a direct component of volunteers that supports an active duty military command like the U.S. Coast Guard Auxiliary. There are many people within that, and let me just give you a real quick history of that. I'm going to adjust myself so the lighting, I see I'm kind of getting in a shadow here.
Yeah.
There we go.
Okay.
Bye, Globe. Hello. So, anyhow, the current day U.S. Coast Guard Reserve was born out of volunteers. And the Coast Guard recognized that the volunteers were an important part. So they organized and created the Coast Guard Auxiliary, which I am a part of. I have been now for, I guess, going on 4 years. The first few years that I was in, I was in communications when I was active duty. Oh, excuse me. And so communications was what I looked at when I joined back in. For me, the Coast Guard, the military, just is part of my blood now. It's part of my DNA. And like I said, looking into retirement, this was a great way to give back for what I had gotten and to do something really fun. So anyhow, short story, I went to a open call for people, auxiliaries, to go to the Hillsborough Inlet Lighthouse. Anybody can Google that. And handle lines for the boats that bring the public over to tour the lighthouse and the grounds. The grounds are very historic. There's 3 cottages there. There's actually 4 buildings that are original from 1904 and 1905, and the light itself was lit in 1906. So the structures have been there for quite some time. I was on the dock in uniform, and I started talking to some of my co-workers, some of my fellow auxiliarists, and they started telling me about this gentleman, Art McKennian, who you can read about if you go to the society website. And I wanted to know who he was. Now, back when I came to Miami as a non-rate right out of boot camp, one of the very first jobs they had us do was Carl, one of the guys I went to boot camp with, and I can't remember his name, but he and I were stationed together in Miami. They sent us up to the lighthouse to pick up garbage or do whatever. And back then it was a private facility. It still is. It's those cottages, the original keepers' cottages, are now rental quarters for military personnel, mainly high-ranking military personnel. There was an admiral on the property yesterday. So very high-ranking people. So I met this gentleman, Art, to talk about what happened with the light. It had broken, and there were some issues. There was mercury. The lens itself used to float in a bed of mercury, 2,000-pound lens. And when Carl and I were up there, we were messing around with the lens. Nobody's allowed to touch it now because the age of the machinery that's in there.
What did you do?
Well, back then, we pushed it around and we're spinning it, and just this is 30 years ago, okay? I mean, we were kids, we didn't know. So I was talking with Art, and when he found out I was active duty Coast Guard and that I had some history with the lighthouse, we just kind of got along a little bit. The man is 80 years old. I just was with him yesterday for several hours, and healthy as can be. But so I came home from the duty, and I sat down and I wrote an email to him suggesting ways that the Preservation Society, who is licensed to operate the public tours of the lighthouse on specific days, can generate some funds, and that was to open up the lantern room. The lantern room is where that lens is and where all the machinery is and all the components are that operate that light, that operate any lighthouse. That's the lantern room. And that's worldwide, lighthouses worldwide. And yes, that's my latest thing. And yesterday I was there for 6 hours. We had 6 boats. It was a long day.
I bet it's a very special place that I want to visit one day. And honestly, when you told me the first time about it, I would say I'm not surprised. It's the kind. I'm not surprised that it's you taking care of it. It's. I like to say that when people, the way that you do something is the way that you do everything. And when people look at the way you take care of your place, the way you take care of your business, the way you treat people in your life, I'm sure that the lighthouse will be in good hands. Yeah, because people are not lousy 6 days a week and become experts on something on Sundays, right?
Yeah, right.
If they are like that all the time, and I see that. Allan, this is amazing. This is amazing. I'm happy to have you participating with us, traveling, and and being a great friend. And I want to again thank you for all that. And we'll do, of course, a follow-up next time I'm back to Florida, which will be this summer sometime. We'll do another podcast. And again, thank you very much. And on that note, I want to close. Anything else you would like to say as your closing arguments?
I guess the biggest things that I really want to pound upon for anybody who would be listening is that You only get back as much as you give. If you're gonna be an energy vampire, be an energy vampire, but go someplace else and do that. If you can't take 5 minutes to give back what you've gotten through not necessarily Voyager's world, but through other websites that don't require a whole lot, if you're taking that and you're saying, oh, but I'll do it at another time. Well, that to me isn't going to happen. I'm sorry, and that's just an opinion. Give back. Just give back. It can happen anywhere. If you're traveling through Voyager's world, once we're up and running, if you're traveling to a city that you've never been to before, and you're going to eat, you're going to go to a restaurant, make a party. Just say, hey, if there's a hyperlink include the links for the transportation, everything you can. Throw it up there and say 6 o'clock or 8 o'clock or whatever time you want to do it. Drinks and dinner at such and such. Come on out. You never know who you're going to meet. You'll never know the fun you're going to have. And it didn't take but 5 minutes to sit down, type it out, hit enter, post it, and then show up and do your job. Not just a job. Show up and have a lot of fun. And and if you even do that, that is hosting. It doesn't have to be bringing people into your home. It doesn't have to be handling them by hand to get them from the train station to the airport or whatever. Oh, those are great things to do. Hospitality comes in many, many forms. Take 5 minutes, do it, give back the karma. Give back the karma.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Allan, for your inspiration, and we'll be in touch, and you'll be back to the podcast as soon as we meet in person.
Thank you so much for calling, and we'll talk another time.
All right, thank you.
Have fun!
We hope you like this podcast as much as we like to produce it. This has been made possible by the efforts of dozens of volunteers, supporters, partners, and visionaries that are helping us build Voyager's World. Please visit our website, join us for free, and start participating.